Welcome to week 5. We're only doing one short recording, at least that's the plan. We've been talking for an hour and a half about different things with rate and ratio and proportion. And this is like the end of all of that. We're actually all the way up to word problems with a proportion. Proportions are the equations that have a rate equals a rate. So but this won't be a great video if you weren't here, but this is the bring everything fresh in your mind if you were here and then it's been a little bit and you're looking at the homework. So how do we do these types of problems? I start by reading the problem until I have said the first situation. These problems always have two situations. The first one, okay, Scott can do 3 test problems in 11 minutes. That's it. That's the first situation. I stop reading and I write down 3 problems per 11 minutes. And we've talked a lot earlier about why we're doing writing it as a fraction and things like that. We're not going to do all of that again. Now, I don't keep reading yet. I know that whatever the other situation is, it's going to still need the word problems on the top and the word minutes on the bottom. Writing those labels right now, before I keep reading, prevents me from accidentally flipping some numbers upside down and putting them in the wrong spot, which is the common mistake. So now I've written my first problem, my first situation goes on one side, and the other situation, I don't know the values yet, but I've set it up with the labels. So now I keep reading. How long, the minutes is what I don't know, would it take him to finish a test with 20 problems? So the problems is 20. So that's the process for setting these up. We're looking for 2 situations, a situation on the left and a situation on the right. We write one of them. It doesn't matter if we've got problems on top or minutes on top. For whichever way we do it, we need to keep the words the same. If it's problems on top on the first one, it has to stay problems on top. If it's minutes on bottom, it has to stay minutes on bottom. Now that our setup is done, we do this cross multiplying thing. I'm going to pick which diagonal has the y and write that, and I can pick also to write the y first. If I'm having 2 things on either side of an equal sign, it doesn't matter which one goes on the left or the right, so I'm going to pick to go on the left the one that has the y. And when I'm multiplying y times 3 or 3 times y, it doesn't matter which I write first, I'm always going to pick to write the y first. Then on the other side, we have 11 times 20. The second step, I'm going to keep the y times 3 just the way it is and condense the 11 times 20. What is 11 times 20? Well, 11 times 2 is 22 with a 0 floating afterwards. And then finally, there's a times 3 stuck onto the y. How do we get rid of that? We do a divided by 3. Often in this step, you'll want to use a calculator. That's fine. 220 divided by 3, and I'm getting about 73 as my answer. So I think I will round, use the about equal sign to show that in this step I am rounding. So about 73, and what's my label? Because it's a word problem. Y went with minutes. So 73 minutes. And I'm done. Again, this is the end of our lecture. It probably won't help you a lot if you weren't in class, but for the in-class people, this was the summary. The other parts of our Jamboard for a whirlwind review was finishing up something from last week, talking about a unit rate. We can divide top divided by bottom to get a unit rate, like dollars per gallon or something. We talked about cross multiplying and how it's the same as the brute force method of finding a common denominator, but we're just not writing the denominators. We talked about how you can use cross multiplying to just confirm are 2 proportions equal to each other. I'm sorry, are two rates equal to each other? Are they proportional? The top one was yes, the bottom was no, but in real life, no one does that. Instead, what we want to do is have a variable and force it to be true. What number will fit in here to make this equal rather than checking? And so we did that a little bit, and then we had a distraction of what's this like times 4 divided by 4? Why does that work? Let's use some pictures to understand that process. Then going back to where we were, it's nice. It's always going to be y times something. So it's always going to be divided by that something. Since we can make these physically on the paper always look the same, then it's very easy, standard, repetitive, comforting once you get used to it. We talked about how to take a word problem and make it into a proportion. And the lesson we got is for almost everyone, we want one situation on one side and the other situation on the other side, and the words matching. If we start with miles, put miles first. If we end with hours, put hours second. And then we actually did our own word problems. The only way these can really trick you is if the second situation tries to change a label on you. We know it needs to be minutes because it was minutes in the first situation, but they said 5 hours. So we had to do some fidgeting and say there's 60 minutes in an hour. So 5 times 60 is 300 to make it minutes. But that didn't catch us off guard and trick us, because again, you want to write these labels before you finish reading the second part of the problem so that you know what kinds of things will go in these two spots. Then you can't be tricked.